Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, a Cadence independent media production. If you're new to the series, here we talk about tuning and tone and sound, all that kind of stuff. Today we're talking about a kind of combination of two things. One is tuning a tom batter to just above a wrinkle, and also utilizing finger pressure in the center when there's no tension on the head to kind of find that spot and see if we can get an even tuning just by looking at the wrinkles. This is an interesting thing that also came from a comment on YouTube. I'm familiar with the idea of doing this sort of thing of pressing on the head to get rid of the wrinkles to just like see which lugs have and don't have tension on them. I usually do this with bass drums, especially if they're tuned super low, because that's maybe the only place where I consistently tune to somewhere just above a wrinkle or maybe a little bit higher. But this particular commenter was curious about this sound and for getting the lowest possible kind of resonant tone out of a tom. So what we have here is a 12, and we're going to try it out. Thanks again, as always, to ProMark by D'Addario, our presenting sponsor. Now, what we're going to do with this drum right now is check out basically what the head feels like, looks like, with no tension at all. It's not even finger tight. We've noticed previously when experimenting this that if we finger tight the tension rods, you actually can't see the wrinkles because it's laying really flush on the bearing edge. So I have no tension on the rods at all. And when I press on the head, you'll see that there are pretty clear wrinkles all the way around. So I'm not pressing super hard. You don't need to press super hard to see them if there's no tension on any of the lugs. The idea here as presented to us is basically that you take one hand and press in the center of the head so that you can see the wrinkles. And then, and this was specific, in no particular order, just turn lugs where you see wrinkles until you don't see wrinkles anymore. And the idea here is that once you've done that, you should have even tension because you can't see any wrinkles. So we'll take a swing at that and kind of see where that gets us. Yeah, I'm noticing that like I've done 4 of them and I have to press harder to see the wrinkles in the 2 that I didn't do. So I did 5 of them. Okay. Yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah, that was interesting because I noticed that as I added tension to some of the lugs, we started to lose the wrinkles a little bit everywhere, but particularly the ones that I turned. But once I got to 4 lugs, it was hard to see the wrinkles in the other 2, and I actually lost track of which ones I'd turned. The harder I pressed, the more I could kind of see the wrinkles in those again. But in the end, just pressing in the center and feeling for the wrinkles was how I kind of got to where I got with not having any anymore. Because there was a point where I really couldn't see them. So in theory, now we should have our just above a wrinkle tuning, and theoretically they should all be at the same pitch or pretty close. And lastly, the idea here is that this is supposed to be like sort of the lowest usable tuning that the tom should have. We're not really worried about the reso right now. It's at kind of a medium range, and we might adjust that later, but we're just gonna see what this sounds like now. Okay, so 2 things. Thing number 1, which is a variable that you can take with a grain of salt. This is a die-cast hoop, so the tension of each lug is affecting the adjacent lugs a little bit differently than if it were a triple flange hoop, because this is much, much stiffer. But still, this is very, very low. It's not very resonant. It's not activating the shell at all. And if I go around the lugs, they're not all the same pitch. They're all wildly different pitches. But if I press in the center, I don't see any wrinkles. What I can say about this is that the hoop is level, or like pretty level. And I think that the head is fairly evenly seated, which is a useful thing to take away from this. But in terms of an even tuning method, it's a little bit tricky. And your mileage may vary with this depending on your drum and your hoops and your heads and all of that stuff. But this is a fairly new head. This is a drum that I know has good bearing edges, and this is a hoop that I know is level. So that necessarily means that a little more tuning has to happen for this drum to sound optimal and to be in tune with itself. The other thing is that just this tuning in general, setting aside the method that we use to get here, this is a tuning for mic'd situations, close mic'd situations. We deliberately didn't close mic this drum today because we're trying to deal with the idea that you're sitting here and you're hitting the drum and this is what you're going to hear. Now, right now, the reso is almost a tritone, like it's quite a bit higher than the batter. But even if we pitched it down, which we could do, it's not going to make up for the fact that there is really not enough tension on this head to activate the shell, which we've talked about in the past, what makes resonance and what generates sound that moves laterally from the drum and not just up and down with the heads. And if you're like me and you like your drums and you want to get the most out of your drums, or if you've spent a lot of money on your drums, it seems a little bit like you'd want to make sure you're getting the character of the drum and not just the character of the heads that are on the drum. And when you're tuning this low for toms, it's going to get a little bit dicey. And secondarily, as a variable, yes, this is in a snare basket. I also know what this tom sounds like in a snare basket. We've done it many times. It also has an optimount on the side of it. These are known quantities for us here because we've used this drum a lot. Now, if a sound works for you, then it works for you. And we are not making rules here. All we're saying is that to press in the head and remove the wrinkles and say that that's an in-tune, balanced tension is a little bit deceptive. But at the point that I'm at now, it'd be very easy to balance the tensions because I have close to balanced tension on all the lugs. So if I were to do this, I would probably do the standard star pattern rather than just randomly tuning the lugs. And then I would make adjustments to get it into a single pitch. Just to, for my own peace of mind, I detuned the head and I did this process in a star pattern again. It's still not evenly tuned. And something that I noticed as I was going is that I found myself unsure of just how much pressure each of the lugs was actually getting to as I was getting rid of the wrinkles. It didn't feel like it was the same amount of pressure to get rid of them because each time you bring tension on a lug, you're bringing some amount of tension on the rest of the head. So you're getting a lot of crosstalk. You can think of it as like a bunch of guitar strings that are all connected. And when you turn one, you're affecting all of them, which is why detuning one lug changes the entire sound of a drum, no matter what bass drums, tom, whatever. So again, it feels fairly even, and it does feel like the head is centered, which I think is one useful thing about pressing in the center. You're definitely not going to, especially if you have undersized toms like Mapex or Sonar or something like that, this will help you not get your head seated off center. Now, having said all that, it does make sense to me to, if you're going to do this, once you've done the removal of the wrinkles, go around and check all the pitches and make sure that they're the same so that you're getting resonance into the drum and you're not stifling anything. Now, just again, for my own peace of mind, went around the drum, evened out the pitches. It was pretty high, brought it down to sort of the pitch range where we were at when we just did the wrinkle removing pattern, but now the head's in tune with itself, and it does sound more like a tom now. So the bottom line is, this is an interesting thing. There's components of it that are useful, particularly with regards to centering a head on a drum if you're having trouble with that. But ultimately, I don't think it's an end-all, be-all. I wouldn't necessarily call it a tuning method. I would call it a tensioning method, perhaps. But even then, it's not really saving me any time versus using my ears. And at the end of the day, I mean, we say this all the time here. A little bit of ear training goes a long way, and just a little bit of practice, the same way you practice playing, goes a long way. Whatever you do, if it's working for you and you're having no frustrations with it, it's all good, you know. But be wary of anything that seems like a quick fix, and be wary of anything that says that it's the right way. Your ears will tell you if it's the right way or not for you, and that's really the most important thing. Thanks again for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that little button next to the subscribe button so you get the notifications about our new videos. Big thanks to ProMark by D'Addario, our presenting sponsor. And also, please visit our Patreon page, which is brand new, and we're super excited about it. There's a link below. And yeah, see you out there.